Well, we're so excited to welcome you here to the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library Museum for the opening of our newest exhibit, Here I Have Lived, Home in Illinois. This exhibit really explores the story of Illinois through 31 unique stories from throughout the Prairie State. We're so excited to be able to share these stories, many of which are kind of untold stories, stories that we don't talk about regularly. You know, as part of our mission to inspire civic engagement through the diverse lens of Illinois history and sharing the world with the world the life and legacy of Abraham Lincoln, we're honored to both center and start with Lincoln and start in his home, but also really be able to expand these stories beyond that, from the sort of northern region all the way down to, you know, Cairo and Metropolis in the southern parts of the state, including places like Metro East. This is really an exhibit that has been a full team effort, and I couldn't have done it without our incredible team here at the ALPLM. Everything you'll see in the exhibit is all custom made. It was all made in-house by our incredible designers and our incredible exhibits and shows team. So without further ado, we welcome you to the exhibit and hope you will enjoy it. So welcome to the exhibit. Again, right from the beginning, you were centering you here in Illinois with prairie grass, the images of some of the folks featured here in the gallery, because we want you to know that home is more than just a place, right? It's not just a structure, it's about that sort of feeling of community and belonging that exists for us. So we're trying to sort of center you here with a postcard from home, so to speak. As you walk into the first gallery, you'll actually feel we're trying to evoke the Lincoln home. So the wallpaper is an exact recreation of the very wallpaper that was in the Lincoln home, down to all the details, and our team sort of blew it up and made new wallpaper thanks to the magic of technology. We're also featuring, on the side here, the whatnot cabinet. So our carpenter actually built this based on this sketch right here that you see in the corner. On the whatnot cabinet would have been this bust by Leonard Volk that was recently donated to the museum from the Pritzker family of Abraham Lincoln. So this bust was a gift to the Lincolns from the sculptor Leonard Volk, and it stood on the cabinet just like you see in the image here. So we've recreated that experience for people.
Approximately what year was that donated?
That was 1850, 1860, thank you. It was donated to us last year, yeah. And then, of course, behind you, again, we're really trying to help evoke those feelings of home. And so you'll see rotating images. Every image that you see are of Illinois. So you'll see large-scale images on the walls, but they're all Illinois families. They were all taken here in Illinois. And so we want you to see glimpses inside folks' homes, inside to their sort of communities. Some of my favorites around the kitchen table, which are just absolutely beautiful. And so in this area, we're really exploring what does it mean to find home, to think about that quest for home. This is one of my favorite pieces here. It's actually a table that was built by Solomon McWhorter. His father, Free Frank McWhorter, actually founded New Philadelphia. And so we're so thankful to the McWhorter family for loaning us this for the exhibition. But this was the first free Black community platted here in Illinois and frankly in the country. And so it's incredible just to, again, tell that story about what it meant to build a free home for folks. You'll also see the mirror kind of on the back side of it, but the mirror that was owned by Abraham Lincoln. And instead of just telling the story of Abraham Lincoln owning this shaving mirror, we're talking about the shaving mirror that he ultimately donated to one of his Portuguese servant girls, Ritta DeFreitas. And so in the mirror, again, you can imagine Lincoln both shaving his beard, but also the story of her and what it meant to be a Portuguese immigrant moving to Springfield in the Jacksonville area from Madras, or Madeiras, I guess. So on this area, envisioning home, this, again, another one of my favorite pieces. This is actually a design model from Buckminster Fuller, who's from the Carbondale area. So those SIU Carbondale folks will remember this well. And what's great about this, of course, many people know about Buckminster Fuller and his design for Epcot, but here we have, again, a small scale design, a geodesic dome that was built with Charles Ryan, based in collaboration with Fuller. We'll also, later this summer, welcome the Dymaxion car that Buckminster Fuller designed right here in the plaza, which I'm really excited about bringing that in, and we're super thankful to Isringhausen for partnering with us on this. Let's see, behind you, we also highlight people like Margaret Burroughs, who founded the DuSable Museum of African American History in Chicago, and this is one of her linoleum scratch print portraits that she did of Harriet Tubman. So she herself was an artist, had been involved in creating the Southside Community Arts Center, and then of course the DuSable later. But what's amazing about her story is her home itself had actually been the home for Pullman porters before she owned it. And so when you think about that legacy and that deep sort of soaking of history, it's pretty cool to sort of see that. And so in here, again, you get these large scale images, which I love, of people's Illinois homes. You know, you see someone around at Christmas time and the kind of weird blow up Santa and the tinsel tree. So again, we're trying to evoke those memories for people, helping them remember what is home, what does it mean to create home, what are those special memories we have centered around the home. Right in this case, we're talking a little bit about like what we're calling a sort of Cahokia commoner, because unfortunately their name was lost to history. But the idea of, again, what did it mean to have homes really stolen and taken, but what were those homes like beforehand, right? It's not just a story of settler colonialism, it's also a story about what was there before, who lived in Illinois before statehood. What did that mean for those homes to be taken, and what were the ways in which they built and defined home? So we're really excited to feature this piece as well. So of course, we're featuring probably one of the most famous Illinois residents, Michelle Obama, and this is actually her piano trophy on loan to us from the Obama Foundation. And what's great about her story, again, the way in which we're centering and telling her story, is that her story was about her family, about the sense of community they created. She learned from her aunt, you know, how to play piano. And so being able to showcase this trophy, be able to talk about how really their parents saw their children as their investment. That was their legacy and their future that they sowed into. And of course, if you read or hear her talk now, she speaks a lot about that, about the work that her parents put into her and her brother. And ultimately, we see where that led her to become an accomplished lawyer and now writer. On the back here, we've got folks like Buffy Ives, who, again, you know, most of the time we talk about the Stevenson family, we're talking about it through the men. And we have an incredible exhibit which talks about the Stevenson family, which we're so honored to have here. But this time we really wanted to center the women of the Stevenson family. And so this was a christening gown that was worn by Buffy and probably worn by her brother Adlai as well. And so we were really excited, again, to be able to tell that story, to not just focus on the great men of history who often get their stories told, but also focus on the great women as well. The women like Buffy, who helped to play sort of hostess for her brother during his time in the governor's mansion. So this is actually a story we're telling about Richard Pryor. So Richard Pryor, who is from Peoria, Illinois. And what I love about this story is Richard's talking about his kind of growing up and home in a brothel. Not many folks can say that they lived in a brothel, but Richard, that was part of his story. And what's always incredible about it to me is when he started out, he really didn't try and talk about that. He actually tried to mimic other Black comics like Bill Cosby of the day. But over time, he really begins to lean into this story and talk about his upbringing, talk about what it meant to be raised in a brothel by his grandmother and his family. Behind you, you'll see, I guess right here, you'll see plaques and awards from Hazel Johnson. Hazel is the mother of environmental justice. She was someone who she really, she wanted to create a safe home for her family. She began to recognize the correlation between the sort of toxic donut, as she called it, the toxic dump that surrounded her house and surrounded sort of the projects of where they lived in Altgeld Gardens, and the rise of cancer and other respiratory issues. And she began to push the city and ultimately push the state to clean up that toxic dump, to not put these things in her community. And so she really coins the term environmental justice. And we're so grateful for the legacy of both her work as well as her daughter, Cheryl Johnson, who continues that work to this day. Yeah, so this is super fun. So this is, and you can actually see her wearing it in the photo here. So this was a dress worn by Tina Turner during a 1982 appearance on The Tonight Show. And again, Tina's story, we're not just talking about Tina the artist. We're really talking about how Tina is ultimately flees from a domestic violence situation to make a life for her and her children. How she really is reclaiming space for herself. And so in this area, we're really talking about what does it mean to fight for home, to envision a home that is safe for your family. So many of our stories we think about as happy homes, but sometimes it wasn't happy initially. It's about, again, building that, envisioning what would that be like for people to have that. So it's pretty cool to see her dress and to see, again, the performance aspect of it from a girl from the sort of Metro East area of Illinois. So in this area, we're really talking about reporting on home. What does it mean to create a home as a sort of reflexive process, as you're imagining and exchanging what does home mean? So again, beautiful Illinois images of children reading with an octarian, I believe, or octogenarian. But also you see behind you the cradle that was used by Louise Pfeiffer for her children, and a letter where she's again writing to her husband talking about what does it mean to be on the home front, her sort of fears and trepidation about the Civil War and how it's impacting her family from a domesticity standpoint.
So Oscar Michaud, who's in the exhibit, his star is on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, but that's the end of his story. His story starts in the southern town of Metropolis, Illinois, and from Metropolis he's a farmer, and he's tired of the farming lifestyle after a while, and so he goes to Chicago. So it's a story that takes us from southern Illinois north to Chicago, and ironically, as a Pullman porter working on Pullman trains, he takes these trips across the Midwest, and he says he falls in love with the Middle West. These every town is a garden farm, he remarks in one of his later novels. And he's drawn back to farming, and he goes to claim government land in South Dakota. And he claims land, he ends up sort of failing at that. He claims too much land, where it takes so much effort and energy to actually turn his land into a farm that he ends up abandoning his homestead in South Dakota. But he turns to writing and filmmaking. He writes a novel called The Conquest and another one called The Homesteader, both about his homesteading experience. This search for home haunts the rest of his life. Many of his early films are about homesteading as well, and he makes films from the 1920s to the 1940s. And the film we have on display here, Within Our Gates, is actually sort of his answer to A Birth of a Nation, the racist film that had come out at the time. Within Our Gates, the very title, appears at the beginning of The Birth of a Nation. When the early in the film, it has a quote that includes the words "within our gates." So Michaud is both grappling with his search for home as well as racism in American society. And I actually wrote a book recently called "The First Migrants: How Black Homesteaders' Quest for Land and Freedom Heralded America's Great Migration." And a whole chapter is about Oscar Michaud's search for home and this transition to novel writing and filmmaking. And I think his story is my favorite story in the exhibit and probably one of the most powerful stories in this exhibit.
The interesting thing about this document is it belongs not to the daughter, Lorraine Hassenberry. It belongs to her father, Carl Hassenberry, who most people don't know. Lorraine Hassenberry is famous for Raisin in the Sun. She's a playwright. Her father was a well-to-do African-American developer, and he purposefully bought a house in a white community, hoping to integrate that community. The case goes all the way to the Supreme Court as they refuse him They refuse him the right to live in his own property there. The case goes all the way to the Supreme Court as Hassenberry versus Lee, and he wins. However, her father would become so disenchanted with American life that he will live out his days as an expatriate living in Mexico. So he will ultimately leave this country where he fought so hard to be a part of the fabric of the United States.
In our final section, we get to share with you what it means to fight for home. So sometimes, again, we've seen home as this idealized place. We've seen home as a place that people were envisioning or trying to create for themselves. But in this section, we're really, again, exploring what it means to fight for home. What it means when your home is destroyed or when you have to fight against oppressive systems to establish a home. So here you'll see the Hansberry decision. Again, this was a copy from the United States Supreme Court, authorizing her family to be able to live in the home that they wanted to live in. This is actually here the remains of a dresser that had been in the Springfield race riot of 1908. And we talk a little bit about, where is he? Charles Gibbs, who was really the sort of witness to the Springfield race riot as he tried to rebuild and establish a home here in Springfield, Illinois. And so throughout the exhibit, people will see touch screens that they can submit their answers. So if you look over here, you know, what is one of the most important ways to create a sense of home? And so people can actually touch the screen to share, what does home mean to you? When you think of home, what do you think of first, right? Do you think of smells and scents, food tastes, holidays and special events? We'll click one, right? Food. Food always makes me think of home. And so 27% of our visitors so far have seen that, right? How many times in your life have you moved to a new house or apartment? Right? And so we're inviting people to submit their answers and to see what other people respond to. How have other guests seen or experienced or thought of home here in Illinois or really elsewhere as well? My name is Christina Shutt, and I'm proud to be the Executive Director for the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum, as well as the curator for this incredible exhibit, Here I've Lived, Home in Illinois. We invite you to come to Springfield, Illinois to see this exhibit. During its run, it'll be running from March 2023 until January 2024. We are so excited about welcoming you into our home of a museum, and we hope you'll visit us soon. You can learn more about the exhibit by visiting our website, presidentlincoln.illinois.gov.